Vivo.
We are live.
We are live
And then
on Radio
try
Cañonera,
live
another
and
live,
thrive.
and we're
Let me.
committed to being here for an hour because we have business to bring you all trainings.
Oh, there's the live. I want to share it. They took away that easy share live. I don't know what's happening with that. I
Yeah,
don't like that. I
I have
don't
my
like that.
theories, but
I don't like that.
so how are you all doing these days?
Well,
People are already commenting on our post.
What they say? Hey, y'all.
well, you know
No,
when
comment.
you just got your nails done and
Yeah.
you're like, "Hey, girl."
You're like, wait, over there? Over there?
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing that brought me joy with like the past month, I guess.
Yeah.
Like getting your nails done.
Yes.
It
Uh,
looks good.
uh, 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 uh. Thank you. Wait, okay.
Brittany's on. Hey, Britt.
Hey, Britt.
Brittany is loyal.
Right.
Brittany's
She's
like
like an
there's a
honorary
light
machetera.
coming.
She's an honorary machetera for sure.
My
Yeah.
throat is hurting me.
Oh no, they put back the easy share button.
Girl, your
Yeah.
throat is hurting you. What you been? What happened? You been out in the streets?
What kind of
I don't
street?
think I'm. I don't think. Well, you know what's happening? What's happening is a few things. This work that we do is emotionally draining, and when you get emotionally drained, it takes a toll on your body. Um, this past week we facilitated once, right?
Twice, three
Yeah.
times. Twice. Did
This
we do
past
Twice at
three
least.
times together?
twice?
Twice. But on Monday I did um I have a client that I've been doing every week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they signed up for the full. I do a full anti-oppression training.
Mm-hmm.
That if we did it face to face, it will be 3 full days, right? Back like three. It's like a retreat. It's a 3-day retreat. So I've been doing it. Anna and I have been doing it every Monday. So that was Monday, and then I had other clients. I had coaching. I had a whole bunch of other stuff. So it takes a toll on you doing this work. And then today, like white Latinos are thinking that they're down and everything else, and they're just all thieves and thieving because that's what they do best. I
That's all they
find
know
out.
how to
I
do.
find, I find out. All black women have been stolen from. That's like the starting point. I think that the starting point is that all black women have been stolen from. We have all been stolen from white people. Um, and we all know this, right? But then when when somebody says it, just like when somebody says it to now it's not even through your face. When somebody says it in a Zoom, just openly, and then it takes an extra toll on you. And that's what happened to me today. So
Wait, so the context is that somebody stole JV's work.
yes, and it was just like, oh, when I facilitated, basically like when I facilitated the work that the two of us have been doing together with this other group, it didn't work like how we have done it together.
Of course it didn't work because you are the sauce. Like I think that that's the other thing too. That it's like the callousness with which she just told you, "Oh, I just took your work and did it without you," as if you were like, as if you were un cero a la izquierda, like you don't matter in the work, like you're not the person that is adding something to it. Of course, it's not gonna work without me because I am the sauce, sis.
Right?
Right? It's not
And,
going to work.
and the thing is, it's like, so like, because this is like a client, so we have a contract. So this is like a person thinking that maybe they can use my agenda with another group, like a little trial group, or maybe like another extra little meeting. And I'm like, this is not how this works.
I think that it's also constantly this idea that you're supposed to be grateful for like the exposure, right? Like when influencers talk about like when companies try to pay Black people in exposure, but they'll compensate white people with money. It's the idea that somehow I think that she probably interpreted that you're supposed to feel grateful that she turned around and did the content that you developed on your own as like some sort of homage to your efforts.
Like at a meeting, like at a random meeting. Like, when I did this, like when I did the meeting that now, and when I say do it together, she does the setup. She does like the technical support for me as part of the agency, right?
So you collaborate, but you don't co-facilitate. It's not even that she's on the co.
No, it's not a relationship.
The person was tech.
Right? It's one of these affinity groups. You know how that works. Like, it's an affinity group. They bring in a consultant, and then you work with the staff.
This makes it even more scandalous in my eyes.
Right? So then it's like, I did this thing with this other group that just formed, and I'm like, do you understand? And I don't usually bring up education because I don't usually bring up education, but in this context, I will. Only in this context. I have 2 master's degrees. 2. One from a regional university. One from a university here in the United States. And I've dedicated over 20 years of doing this work. That doesn't come easy.
Mm-hmm.
So then somebody's just going to borrow an agenda that has been doing like...
Borrow. Because those are the words that they use. I was inspired by.
Right.
I can't eat inspiration from homages or gratefulness.
So I'm gonna be having a conversation with her, with the director, not even her supervisor. I don't care who's there. I'm gonna be having a conversation with the director because I will be compensated. And wait till, like, it's not only compensation. It's like we're gonna really deal with this. Yeah. And if they're not willing to like engage in a proper conversation that includes financial compensation, and an apology and a restructuring of how things are done, this will be public. What also is going to be public just now, and I just don't have the capacity for this. I'm still not done with Jorge Ramos. Like that's not a closed door. Like it's not, because now like Dash has receipts. Like we have receipts, including phone numbers of his producers. Right, and the context there is, again, white Latinos doing their white Latino thing, which is still white. They do their white thing. Right? Jorge Ramos stole quotes. I don't know if he stole from Ilia Calderon or not. Or maybe she gifted it to him afterwards. Who knows? Because I don't know what their relationship is. I really don't care. She might just be like, hey. Mm-hmm. Right, because they have that professional thing going on. But he stole from me, right? And then they said, oh, that's usually done because you said those things publicly. But I've dealt with media, and I do media. Dash does media. Evelyn has done media. We've all done media. I've dealt with professional media before. I've worked with Telesur. Telesur has owned a lot of my interviews and my produced pieces. They've never stolen a quote from me before. Whenever they've used even a clip of mine, they reach out to me.
Yeah, you have to ask permission.
And 2, they always offer compensation. Right? That's the second thing that they always do. If it's like past like a certain time. Anyways, so they used my quote. He did his little thing. Then he wanted to do a panel of Black women because the article wasn't enough. You know why? Because the little Black puppets that are out there, because there are some. Yeah. We're like, Jorge, you're so great. Right. And then the white cheering, where's the little microphone? Not microphone, your little thing.
I got you. I'm right here.
But the white folks don't always use that. They use the pom-poms. I don't know what the cheers they use. I don't know
Yeah,
what
the air horn is black people.
The air horn is black people. I don't know what the white people
You know
use.
what? I have another app that actually gives a variety of sounds, but I rarely use it because the air horn is live. But I think that it's, you're bringing up a lot of different amazing points that I think that for Black professional people in certain environments are things to really be cognizant of. The most recent one, which is really thinking about the fact that, today, dude was saying that I was saying that we should start a segment called the Raggedy Report, where we like kind of, it's like not a drag, but it's an acknowledgement, right, of some shit that is raggedy.
I like it.
So I will go on record as saying that sometimes the way that people want to be seen, right, in terms of acknowledged in their in themselves, I think for the rest of the Latino community also positions them to be used as pawns, because there's like thank goodness that you see me, right?
Yeah.
And so as a result, that also dilutes our energy, because then I think that it continues to keep power in this space of like, I can throw you crumbs and you'll be grateful for whatever minimal acknowledgement
whenever I feel like it.
Whenever I feel like it, because there's so many people that will take those crumbs and act as if those crumbs are the whole entire slice of cake. And so I think that there is space to be able to recognize that that's not conducive, right, to the type of environment or experience that we want to have. Like, I don't want you to like just thanks. I'm supposed to be grateful that you are acknowledging me. And I think that that's a thing for those people that are watching, also recognizing that Jorge Ramos is an anchor at Univision. So I would say that if we were going to, and he's been a long-standing anchor, so kind of like a Dan Rather type of person at CBS, like a long-standing anchor, well-known in the business. Because there's some people who might be like, who's Jorge Ramos and what is the value? But it's like the value is that it's someone who has access, right, to influence, to capital, to be able to compensate you, to acknowledge you. And so that slight becomes even more harmful because of the access and just like celebrity that this particular anchor has.
Yeah, and the power,
right?
His power. He's been on whatever network he's on, like longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
That's why there's some people that he is like comparable in American television. But I think that also recognizing that when we're in these spaces and we're doing these workshops for organizations and companies, that there is a space where they often feel like, I didn't just shit out this content, right? This content that I've created and assembled and customized for you has come at a considerable cost. And so for someone in your staff to just feel like they can just take it and just be like, oh, I'm just going to do it because why not? Right? As if your presence is not a present in that work. Like, how offensive is that? And it has to do with your educational level, but it also has to do with just the lack of respect. Yeah. In the fact that you were the person that, it's like you make a meal and then a person's like, oh, I ate all the food. It was good. Like, bitch,
I'm gonna make it again.
I sourced the food, I cooked it, and you just
I'm gonna just make it again.
The word that keeps coming up for me is discarded. How easily we're discarded. How easily
and that's how it feels. That's how it feels, and it takes an emotional. It takes a big toll. It takes such a toll that I was in a roll today. I woke up. I did what I needed to do. I was in a complete roll. That meeting today was at around 12:15, more or less. Mm-hmm. I've been unproductive the rest of the day. Mm. It took a toll on me, and I won't recuperate those hours at all. Those hours are gone. And guess what? It cost me, because now I'm gonna probably have to stay up later, wake up extra early tomorrow, and make up those times. And it is what it is. So, and I have to take time to have this nasty conversation that I didn't have to have, right? Because whatever. And I would have never found out if she hadn't made this little joke around language between English and Spanish, and how a word that she used facilitating this thing in Spanish didn't correlate to the word in English. That's the only reason I found out. And I was like, oh, so you're...
That's even more offensive because they're making this cute little jokey anecdote as if, again, you don't matter.
And you're doing, wait, so she did it in the middle of a workshop where you also have to like manage your emotions at the time, because now you have other people observing you when you really want to reach across the damn computer and throttle her on the scene, because now you have to be like, oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, okay. Right.
So you have to somehow like manage and have a fix your face moment.
Wait.
Right? You want to have a fix your face moment when you really want to like punch this bitch in the throat. Like,
it's justified.
Listen, okay? I know, you know what?
The layers upon the layers of lost time, lost energy, lost
that's the thing. So then when we talk about the micro, when we talk about the micro being the macro, that's what it looks like. I didn't enjoy the rest of the day. The rest of the day, I was just really...
Because that micro had a macro effect on you and your day and potentially like anything else, right? Suppose that you would have to show up for something else, or you had another engagement. Now you all fucked up. So now you can't even do anything for the duration of the day, you know, because of the fact that you've been used.
Yeah. You show up late to the next thing. And then they're looking at you like you're irresponsible. Like the video we showed about the Black Colombian man always getting stopped.
Right.
That's a prime example.
When he comes to work late, now his boss is looking at him like, oh, we're going to have to fire you. Okay, now his family doesn't have money coming in. Okay, now, you know. And they don't...
I feel like I want to watch that video like every day. Like, I just want to see that video all the time, because it's erasure. It's like they used you and then they erased you like you didn't even matter. And then she's going to tell you in this like dismissive...
jokey. It's
dismissive, like, oh.
And the thing is that shit happens all
the time
to all of us. And I would say 99% of the time we don't even know.
Yes. Or when we know, we often don't feel like we're in a position to be able to do anything about it except have hurt feelings. That recently happened to me, where not only did someone else get selected to be the face, but when that person didn't execute, you know, thoroughly, then it was, oh, Evelyn, can you please work with them to like fill in the gaps in the training, which really meant, you know, complete or design the agenda.
Do the work for them.
Work mule. Way that it's right. You work mule. You get to really have all the fun of being able to create this because it's the community that you are, you know, so knowledgeable about. But I wasn't valuable enough for you to make me the front or forward facing person, and I still have to show up, right, to be able to then almost clean up this person's mess.
Doubly, because you're managing your feelings as well,
right?
And navigating that space to put on a good face.
Exactly. And so the exhaustion.
You know that a lot of organizations, including foundations, museums, all these big institutions, they put out calls for proposals, like to work with the Black community, so they can get proposals from Black communities. Oh, Dash, this has happened to you.
Yeah.
Never intend to fund these people, individuals, organizations, and then suddenly, like 1 year down in the pipeline, boom, you see your project all over the place, well funded, being developed by white people.
Well funded.
And they have and they took your they took your proposal, sometimes verbatim.
Yeah.
Or even if you just say something in passing. You know, like even mentioning, you're like, damn, like you're this dedicated to not being original. Like you feel okay with this? Goddamn.
Marie from Afro Resistance, you know, she does our communications. This morning she was livid because there's so many groups now saying centering Blackness in the Americas. That's Afro Resistance, like that's been our thing from the beginning.
Yeah.
Centering blackness in the Americas, centering black women, centering black girls in the Americas. Like people don't use that language in the
Yeah.
Americas.
Yeah.
Now so many groups in Latin America are using that term, and that hasn't been used. And
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like,
why
well,
you thought when we did the another panel with another org, I put centering blackness, and you're like, oh, is that Afro resistance?
I was convinced because Anna's like, oh, we have this live tonight, and I was like, what live do we have? And she's like, you're a speaker on the live. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And I didn't even realize maybe you see, or really we're like intersecting life philosophies anyway in
No, but
centering.
now groups are using it, and it's like
Right.
because it
And
sounds
you know the language. You know where it comes from, and they know where they learned it from, but they also don't want to acknowledge.
oh,
Yeah.
local leaders. And, oh, Float is on.
Hey, Floyd.
Hey, we said hey to Britt, Mariana, Sandra, Olajide.
The Lord, I'm like Lord said. Float said, Lord.
Lord.
This happened to me on the opposite side of the spectrum with local leaders in Nicaragua.
Yes, Brittany. Tell them to drop that pin. Let's go. Location.
Right. And we gotta roll. We gotta roll up.
Listen, I got extra masks, hand sanitizer, because you just can't be rolling up. You can't be pulling up the fight just like that in COVID. You got to be ready. So you got to bring all your extra stuff too.
We ready.
And yeah, it's sad and scary because centering blackness is a fad.
Right.
And it can definitely do more harm than good. Well, the good thing I should say is that most of the groups that are using it have been doing a lot of blackness work. So we're not really mad. Like we were like, they're using it, but we're not really mad because these are groups that have been doing that centering blackness for years. Now, if we're a white group putting centering blackness, we will be like, no, you need to remove that. But these are actually good groups. We just need to like don't be using language just like that, or we don't own language either. So that's the other piece that we have to be like, if black groups want to use it, let's see how we can like work together on this. Now, some groups have been like using the hashtag Afro resistance as a verb. So we're really down and cool with that. Like, as like in Spanish, like groups in Puerto Rico are using it as a verb. Like, estamos afro resistiendo, and we are like, yes, and they're tagging us. So that's like really dope. So now we're creating like definitions of what is Afro resistance. Like, what does that look like as a verb, as an action? So yes.
Speaking of language, there was like a little, the current event of this article going around saying that most Latinxes don't use Latinx or Latine, and people going hard. Ev and I were having a chat on Instagram. Like, we be having multiple chats open, just like I answer on WhatsApp and then we go to Instagram. But on one part of it is that people keep circulating this Pew, P-E-W, Pew, the Pew survey of how most, I guess it's in the U.S., or I don't know if they did it in Latin America, but a large portion of Latin Americans don't use Latinx or Latinx or Latine with the E.
Mm-hmm.
And on one side of it, people are like, yeah, this is a corruption of Spanish. This is when woke white people strike, when academics rule the discourse. And I'm like, well, I mean, I've seen the X's, the X and the E used by Black Puerto Rican groups using todes, right? I've seen it, Black Argentine groups using the X's, the X, and the same with Black Colombian groups using the X. And so I'm like, well, that doesn't measure up. That doesn't align with what I've been seeing. And these are groups that are in Latin America that speak Spanish that, yes, there is a component, because Evelyn and I were talking about that. There is a component of academics oftentimes speaking for el pueblo, But I think there's a lot of nuances here that people are not acknowledging, the intersections, and specifically with language, that just in general, language evolves, language changes, and there's this notion that it's U.S. academics influencing, the Latin Americans, and it's like, number one, that's not new. That didn't happen in 2020. La raza cósmica and all of these terminologies and philosophies that people, Latinos, buy into, was inspired and written by U.S. based, or as a response to U.S. isms by white rich Latin Americans. And so, the idea that it's just Latin America responding to the U.S. is a little short-sighted, and that's not what the whole story of what's going on.
Right. I think that, right, and it has, like, there's so much more to it, right? That it's not just, I think the what we were talking about quite a bit was just really thinking about the narrowness in terms of each side of this particular argument of, oh, you're just academic. Oh, you're just you're just transphobic.
Yeah.
Right? As being part of the argument. And I was sharing that, like, I thought that it was beyond that, right? That as a person who I've been literally on both sides, right? Like, my default is not to go to E or X, right? My default is to go to O, I, and I've been in situations and I've been in environments where I have tried to, like, use more, I guess, progressive language, and the audience, it has been wrong for them. So it's been like, esa muchacha no sabe hablar español. Not even questioning me, but just really, and again, that has a lot to do with just the inherent anti-Blackness and just the suspicion that, like, as a person who shows up the way that I show up, that there's automatically an assumption that, like, she's not like us, right?
Yeah, that you already don't speak Spanish, and then you're saying Latinx or Latine.
Spanish is that I don't speak English with a specific accent either, right? So that the accent that I have is more urban, or my presentation, or my demeanor, because I think that there are spaces that I would get more access to if people perceive me as being maybe more refined. So I think that there's also an association that people have where it's like automatic. If I come in big hair, bamboo earrings, the whole 9 yards, it's like, ella es americana. Meanwhile, there are some Black Latinas that don't get that energy because they're, you know what I mean? Like, whether they speak English with a specific accent, or whether they don't use slang in the way that I use it. So they get a little bit more entry. But I think that when you don't get that entry, you also are quicker to be isolated and put into that, like, she doesn't know.
That's
right?
Interesting that you say that with the bamboo earrings, and how some may look at that as Americanized, where all my bamboo earrings experiences have been in Black Latin American hoods. Like, this aesthetic is completely, like, and not even US, right? Like,
that's what I'm saying, that in the US,
from Latin America.
In the US, people automatically don't associate that with anything having to do with Latina. So it's like there is extra things that I may have to do in order to prove, where other people may not have that experience. So there may be that, but that has been something that has, that's happened. So it's just kind of like, I've been on both sides of being, like, almost like having my credibility questioned. In some cases, and then also being on the other side, where if I default to what it is that I've learned, I've automatically been placed in the, you're just progressive and a transphobe and refuse to give people humanity, which in a sense also robs me of my humanity, because you're assuming that I know what you know. And as a result, then you're just, like, placing me in this bucket of, this dumbass bitch doesn't know better, hasn't read anything, doesn't go anywhere. And that also robs me of my humanity. So I always say, like, even when I was in the panel with Janvieve, I'm always very clear that I speak with and for people who may not always have who may not always be on the front end. Like we're not on the cutting edge, but that should not erase us from the conversation. That should not exclude us from the conversation. If I say bienvenidos instead of bienvenidas, that doesn't mean that I'm legitimately making an effort to block someone. It means that maybe it's very possible that I don't know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
or it's not what you
also grandfathers, people that use that language into grace that they don't always deserve. Like simply because you use the right terminology doesn't mean that you're like the most progressive.
That you're not doing harm.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Right. I usually when it depends on, for me it depends on context and location, right?
Yeah.
For me that's really important. Like when I've gone into like rural communities and it's lighter, and they see me from coming from outside, right? I'm like, we're gonna try on something new, right, together, and it might feel uncomfortable, and people are always like laughing, and every time that they say the gender neutral or the gender inclusive, it's a big laughter, and it's like when they get it right in their mind, then there's like a big applause, like finally, like this person got it right.
Yeah.
And they start correcting each other, and it becomes like this thing, right? And there's an understanding of why they're doing it, right? Especially when it's like 15, 20 people. And this is like small communities. Mm-hmm. Now, those are the easiest ones. And from the viejitos to the little kids, they're participating in this. And they're like, no, porque hay que meter a todo el mundo. No, porque usted es un sexista, señor Maldonado. Usted es un sexista. Usted siempre ha sido así. Su mujer hasta se queja de usted. So it becomes that kind of like real fun, lighter kind of thing, right? For me, the hardest groups there are exactly los que se creen la gran cosa. Y que eso no es español correcto, licenciada. Are the ones that are working in the city and for the government, even though they don't have big positions and they have like really like subordinate positions.
Yeah. They're an administrator, so they feel
right.
And they've made it.
They've made it, but they're the ones that are the most oppressed. The ones that like the photocopy paper doesn't get there, and the photocopy doesn't even have carbón to make the photocopies. And they're the ones that are like, no, es que eso suena horrible. No, es que así no es que eso no funciona así aquí. And I'm like, how does it not work like this here? When I was just at the school up the river and I gave this training, and they're like, yes, nos gusta, porque el señor allá needs this. How is it? So, and they're open for, and we speak about what unlearning is, y desaprender, y cómo cambian, like all these things are, but it's this like folks holding on to these things, right? And they're the ones that I feel like the most rubs and challenges and closed-mindedness where it's faced. And then you have the elders in my family that are very special and loving. And they're the ones that say, que a nadie le importa esta vaina. Just like that. And when it's like, like there was this meme going around in Panama, and I got it in all my family chats. And I was like, do you hear people saying, like, fallecidas, fallecidex? Or do you just say fallecidos? Oh, porque a nadie le importa esta vaina. It's more important just to say how many people have died than, And I'm like, are you really gonna like take it there? Because it's so simplistic just to dismiss like the gender piece when people are dying and all that kind of stuff. But they're using those kind of things in regards to like emergency and urgency to just take away like inclusivity. So there's this
gaslighting.
Pardon me?
Gaslighting.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But then really using that to uphold patriarchy as well. So there's that So there's that thing, and really demeaning the work that other people are doing. Now, the US people, like, I'm done with US people in that sense, thinking of this superior thing. When in Latin America, in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, because I was part of, like, I learned a lot of my gender, like, my feminism piece in Latin America. I started learning with the arroba, which is the little thing. I don't know what it's called in English.
The at.
It's, yeah, the at sign, right? That's what, before the before the X, before the, it was arroba.
Yeah.
And as Evelyn said, the a and the o.
Uh-huh.
Like, those are like the old fashioned ways. So
Mm-hmm.
using gender inclusive language, even in writing, has
Mm-hmm.
always been there.
Yeah.
If folks have chosen to ignore it or not,
Mm-hmm.
that's on you all.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been there. Now that some folks in the United States have discovered it, look at me, discovered it,
Mm-hmm.
and added and put an X to it. Okay, sure, that's on you all, but it doesn't mean that the rest of Latin America has now just like, oh, look, folks in the US are doing this.
Yeah, let me do it.
Ay, por favor, eso es como que bien. Para mí eso, like, I'm always shocked and surprised that people really think about that.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing as like now Black people are being organized in Latin America. What? How?
We've been doing this.
Since we were discovered 10 years ago?
Right. And the terminology to also do the work. I think that that's the other side too, that people assume that just because now the terminology has been popularized, that that's when the work starts. That people have been doing the work without the terminology everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the other side, that it's like there's this kind of like, oh, now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've been saying Latina and not been transphobic.
Right.
In the 70s. How about that? How about those two things can happen at the same time? Right?
So
I've always heard niños and niñas. I've always heard niñez.
Always.
This is not new.
Always. I don't like when they're so hell bent on it. Because I get it. Because when I'm talking to my people, I say Latino. I say Latina. I don't say the X as much as I do with certain people. Right? In the same way that my parents still use the word Hispanic. So people who use Hispanic, they're just dumbasses, and we shouldn't speak to them. I completely agree with you in that regard, Evelyn, like completely. But when people are so hell bent, it's like, okay, so even if two people feel represented by it, what's your beef? If you don't have to use it.
Right. And that's my whole thing, that it's like there shouldn't be any type of suggestion that people, like, in either side. Right? If we don't make the assumptions, like for me, I'm not making the assumption that somebody that uses a or I is a transphobe, and I'm not making the assumption that anybody that uses the X or the A is some evolved individual, right? I think that that's the whole thing. Or I'm not preventing someone from using language that feels right to them in the environment that they're in. I'm not going to go anywhere and be like, you're not supposed to say, you know, like those memes with the cat. Where it's like, you're not supposed to say, you know, I or O. You're supposed to say, like, listen.
Yeah. Let people use whatever language that represents them. What's on your biscuit? What's skin?
I will say though, I do use for me gender inclusive language. For me. I am raising my children to use gender inclusive language. And I correct, or I whatever Omar, my partner, when he uses a masculine, because I'm really adamant about not invisibilizing myself and my daughter, because I do feel that my daughter being represented in language in my household when we are 50-50 in this house is really important. Having said that, my daughter also corrects her teachers a lot, to the point now that her teachers have integrated saying niños y niñas a lot. Where before it was just like niños because it's a dual language school. right? So for me, you know, and I keep on, I've told her, no, tú tienes que decirle a la maestra que hay niñas en el salón. Like, that's really important for me. I also give a lot of grace, right? So if we're in a relationship, and I don't mean an amorous relationship, if we're in a relationship of as a friendship, right, or whatever relationship, um, and we are and Spanish or English is our primary, whatever language is our language of thing, and you know that this is really important to me, right? Because it's also like nails on a chalkboard, right? After a while, and it's not, and after a while, it's just not part of consideration. Like, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna be like, can you also like integrate like the feminine or the gender neutral into this? And it doesn't have to be like, listen, Evelyn. Like, that's not the conversation. It could be like, could we just be mindful to like how it has happened on the WhatsApp groups, right? Could we just be mindful of gender? Could we just be mindful of this? That to me is good enough, right? It's because it's really important to me, and that I feel is how we also build relationships as human beings. Now, do I take into consideration a lot of other factors? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is age a consideration? Absolutely. Is not the same to ask somebody my peer or younger to integrate that as to ask somebody in their 80s to integrate that. I would never ask my mother-in-law and be like, mire, usted tiene que comenzar a decir, like, that is not going to happen. I'm going to have to just suck it up and be like, I suck it up already, because it's all male-centered conversation where it seems that Anayansi just doesn't exist. You know, it's a good thing Anayansi reminds her, yo también estoy aquí. Anayansi is 7. She can do that. I'm not doing it. Right? And then my mother-in-law will be like, oh, sí, tú también, Cushita, tú también, right? So yes, so I feel like there's ways to do that, where there's grace, there's also honoring who we are as individuals, and then there's understanding history and context and who people are,
right,
with love and respect.
Yeah, and I think that's really it from me, at least from my perspective. When I see it, I think that there's a level of disrespect that comes along with the people that use O and A. And I think that there's a difference between using O and A versus only, like, for example, there's a difference between saying niños y niñas versus going to niñas. Right? Because for me, in my experience, niñas, even though I've heard it used in context less. So for me, that's newer language. Right? And so if I and it's also like the part of the assumption that somehow people are actively excluding someone, like include, right? Like, and I think that that's the part where I really have, it's a hard stop for me, because if you know me, then you would know that it's not in my nature to exclude someone. So I think that when those corrections come and they feel very harsh and mean and like judgmental and filled with like harmful judgment, then it's also it will erode whatever relationship is also being built, because then you're positioning yourself to to kind of have a level of like, you're just dumb or uncaring, and that's not it either. You know what I mean? So I think that that's the space. So when I say that I think that people need to be given grace in order to learn, someone who has been the entirety of their, like, for example, my sons take Spanish in school, they're not doing niñas, right? Like, I've looked and it's niños and niñas, right? And it's also that the teacher is saying niños. So it's like he has to also, I have to do the work to be able to say, like, if there's more than one, right? Different people are in the class. So the work should be reflective of the people that are in the building. And he'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about that because this is the way that I learned it, right? And that's, to me, that's like a different thing. And again, I think that my point is, I don't think that automatically not using the language is equals automatic exclusion. But I think that there is a lot, right? It's like, Mariana says here in the chat that it's a work in progress, and that we have little kids identifying themselves as them in kindergarten in our schools. And I think that's magical. Like, I think that is absolutely amazing, right? I am personally not against it. I think that there definitely are, and I think that there are people who are actively against it, which is something different than just like I'm learning and I'm actively in process of being able to neutralize my language, but that if I fall off and I forget and I'm making a passionate point and I don't neutralize my language, that does not equate to me actively trying to exclude anyone.
Yeah.
I think that to me, that's like the space that it feels like.
That the part of people who are actively against it or actively trying to exclude, that's the people I have a problem with.
Yeah.
Because I understand all of those experiences and I knew for some, right?
Right.
Because I was talking to my mom about trans.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, I'm old already." I'm like, "You're not dead yet. Listen." And she listened. She's thinking, "Oh, well, I'm out of my prime," which I'm like, "Girl, you just started, right?" But I'm like, "No, listen, no, for real."
Yeah.
And she did. She did. And so I completely get that. But there's people going hard.
And that's corny as fuck. Like, I think that the people that are out here actively going hard against any type of like, I think there's a difference between like, I'm learning, so I'm not right, and I'm gonna make every effort. Like when I speak, depending on who I'm speaking to, I'm using inclusive language. If I fall off or I forget, I don't expect somebody to jump down my throat. Like I expect somebody to be like, "Oh shit!" Like I know Ev, right? Because otherwise, I'm gonna be like, "Fuck you!" Like then then now we're in a whole different place, right? So it's like just right. That's the space. But I also feel like the people that are actively resisting, they ain't shit either. Like I just think if you are actively like, nah, I'm not gonna do it for the purposes of holding on to some stupid ass language that actively excludes people, then I think that's raggedy and corny.
And they're like, "Oh, most don't use it." I'm like, and so over 20 countries, most of us don't do anything, really. If you want to get technical, right? It's what, 600 million people in Latin America? We all do the same thing?
Yeah.
We don't even all speak Spanish. Let's start there.
Right. And I think that it's also an opportunity to really recognize that a lot of people that are Spanish speakers don't speak Spanish all the time. So that it's also like you also, when you speak Spanish and you're translating, you're defaulting to the way that you learned. Like for example, Spanish for me is something that I do for work. I almost never speak Spanish in my household. So it's like that also makes it a lot more difficult because that the practice would also be it. But because I speak Spanish all the time, because I speak English with my family the majority of the time, we also do use that neutral language, or they might say she, or they might say like they. So I forget the fact that there is exclusion in Spanish language because I don't use it as much.
Yeah.
And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that also exists.
Yeah.
Now, I in English though, like in most of my trainings, and I haven't done it at Caña Negra because it hasn't come up too much. In most of my trainings, I do have a disclaimer around in the group agreements, for example, to use gender inclusive language, and that includes not using you guys, and that includes using folks and not even brothers and sisters, because that came up once in one of the trainings and one of my other trainings, but using like siblings, for example.
Yeah.
And somebody asked me recently, one of my cousin's friends asked me, what is the gender neutral to niece or nephew? And I was like, oh, Adrian Marie Brown usually says nibbling as like a niece or nephew sibling. Nibbling? Pardon me?
I said I'm not here for that.
But what is a gender neutral for a niece or nephew?
My siblings' children. That's what I would say. That's what I've said before. I've been like my siblings' children.
No, but what would you call your niece or nephew?
My sibling's child. Or their name. My sibling's child. If that, but I have a person that identifies as sister. My sister. If I'm talking about my sister, I'm not talking about like referring to people as brothers and sisters, which is a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think that,
and then when I did, so I part of like something else that I did in another thing was manage a Jamu Baraka, right? and I had to write his speeches. And one of his like highest rated speech was when he said, "My brothers and sisters and siblings," and that was his highest rated speech, and I was shocked. But but adding that siblings at the end was what did it. We were like, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes to show how powerful language is, right?
Absolutely.
And how small things, because like, for example, I find myself in the last like year and a half where I make an effort to refer to everybody as they and them. Right?
It's
Because
hard.
even though we ask people what their gender pronoun is, sometimes you forget. Like, you will default into like the phenotype, right? Like, you'll just default into like whatever they appear as. And so in order to prevent offending anyone, I just go right into like the they said, boom.
Yeah.
They said, and that's been really transformative for me. But yeah, in terms like you guys has been hard, because I was a you guys person, and I watch a lot of YouTube where all of them say, "Hey guys."
Yeah.
So it's like I interpret "Hey guys" as being neutral.
Correct.
When it's "Hey y'all" is a good one.
Right.
That's why I always say, "All right, folks," and Dash always makes fun of me.
You're like, "All right, folks."
Oh,
no,
so
because I hear that.
Brittany says that they and them is hard for me because where I'm from, we use it negatively. Right? And Mariana says, I think on a personal level, we know how they would like to be referred to. It's more about the general audience. Yeah, most definitely. So if I know someone personally, I'm going to use the pronoun that I know that they prefer. But if it's a person that I'm just meeting and it's 35 names on a Zoom and I can barely see.
So my kids,
I like it.
My kids have well, my son is 9, right? But he explained this to me when he was 8 last year. And it was one of those like conversations, because they also have these conversations at school. And he said, "Mama, you don't have. It doesn't matter. You don't have to think about the person's gender." That's what he told me. You can say "they" all the time, and you don't have to think about it. I was like, "Why do you have? How? Explain to me," because I always say that, right? Explain it to me. I don't understand. I don't understand. And he's like, "Think about if somebody leaves a coat somewhere, and then you have to return it, and you don't know whose coat it is." And I said, "Okay." And then you're not going to say, "Hey, I think left the coat there." You're going to say, they left the coat, somebody left the coat there. I don't know whose it is. It might be theirs. And then he started using all these, like, it's their coat. It's they left the coat.
That's always an example. Yeah.
Right. And
when teachers are like, "Someone left their sweater."
And he was explaining to me the use of they, them, theirs, all with this random coat that somebody forgot. And he's like, "So don't think about them as she or he. Just think of that coat." And I was like, "Oh, you're so smart.
Just think of the coat.
Just think of the coat.
Just think of the coat.
Just think of the
Think
coat."
of the coat.
And that's what I do in my workshops. Now Zoom has been great.
Yeah.
Because Zoom, the gender pronouns are right there. So now I don't have to. Now I'm just like, Evelyn, she. Hey. So when she said this, I don't have to think about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there is not incorrect. Mariela says, I always use there and they. I don't know why it comes naturally, right? Also, Mariana says, I hate you guys. I hear it in people referring to all females.
I hate it. I always correct when it's like an all female or she identified group, and the facilitator that happens to be a female identified. I'm like, can we not say guys?
So Brittany offers clarification to the prior comment. Clarification: when I say negatively, when we don't care for someone, we tend to purposely not use their name. So when referring to someone that I do like as they, because that is their preference, I feel bad. Right, because I mean, the thing is that we tend to be biased toward our experience in general, right? And so, if our experience tells us that I'm not going to use your name and I'm going to use a pronoun like they as an insult, then you have to undo the learning that comes along with thinking that they equals bum bitch or whatever, right? Like that's just or whatever negative thought you might be thinking about the
Or
person.
bum botch.
Lord adds, it's amazing to experience the world through the simplification of children and how social constructs are so deeply embedded into everything.
Yeah, everything is made up.
1000%, Flor. And because it's made up, you know, to Dash's point, we can learn some new shit because we know if once we understand that it's all made up, then we shouldn't have as much of the attachment that we have to. Therefore, being able to like remove and replace at will because everything is made up.
It's so trippy when you do realize that. When you're like, I'm doing this because someone told me to do this. It could be if they had imagined it the opposite, then everybody would be doing the opposite, right. You know? Yeah. And I think that was one of the biggest points when I was explaining trans to my mom about how the concept of male female, right? If somebody had decided, right? That's a whole nother podcast, right? But if somebody had decided that female was the person with the penis, right? And so on and so forth. And she was like, oh, you know? And so that eliminates that attachment, right? That you're talking about, that attachment to things like, no, well, a female has a vagina and a male has a penis. And it's like, well, what if we said it was the other way and we attached the blue with female and pink with male, right? Then it's like, oh, okay. Maybe we can imagine something else. Imagine dragons. That was a group, right?
Yes, that is a group. Mariana adds, the same people that say guys had criticized me when I said girls to the same group, not noticing that what they say is wrong too, right? Which I've seen, and you know who's actually good for that, which is so amazing to watch young people and the way that they learn. Because I see young people all the time where it'll be a group of girls and they'll tell a male, oh, hey sis. And right? So it's like this, it's to me that I'm like, oh wow, like that is so cool. And it's also like unlearned and learned stuff. So for example, like anytime, occasionally I'll want to tell my partner some tea. And when I want to tell him some tea, I'm like, girl, let me tell you. Right? Because that's my
go-to.
It's like it's my like that girl is like put your ass down. I'm about to tell
context. Yeah, absolutely.
And so the first few times he was like, I ain't no girl. Right? And I was like, stop
right.
Stop
yeah.
And now if I roll up to him and I'm like, girl, he'll be like, what happened?
Larry, I love it.
Because now he knows that girl is like, I'm about to tell you something.
Yeah.
It was rooted in what he had believed also, like, how dare you? Like, I'm not. But if he would have called me bruh, it would have been no problem.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that was the...
Yeah. I see a lot in RuPaul's Drag Race how they'll say he, but in certain contexts, they'll say she and her. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it makes sense, you know, based on the context.
Yeah.
Even when they're out of drag, right? It's like she's upset. And you understand what that means. No, really.
So I was laughing because Dash loves RuPaul Drag Race.
No, okay, so I don't love RuPaul. I like the show.
No, I said RuPaul's Drag Race.
You said RuPaul's Drag Race, yeah.
Because I've been binging. And then they have...
No, you've been binging.
They have like all these spin-offs.
Yeah, they do. I accidentally bought a whole bunch of it on Amazon Prime because I didn't realize it was off of the Prime. I looked at my bill the other day. I was like, bitch, I gotta pay $8.99 for this. Why? I just kept pressing play because my mom likes it. I've mentioned before that when my mom is here, I just play it for her like back to back. We just binge watch.
Okay, wow.
It's true. And also even thinking about how we genderize certain items. Like your wig might be she.
Yeah.
Your car might be he. Right?
Your pants are he. Yeah.
Your plant, right? Like, what is that? What is that about? How many of you do that in the chat? Like, do y'all genderize certain things?
Well, interestingly, I think I have the book somewhere upstairs.
Gender.
There's
Gender. Sorry.
There's a book around gender because everything in Spanish is gendered.
Yes.
Everything in Spanish is gendered. And the gendering in Spanish, there is a very specific reasoning around what's gendered and what's masculine and feminine in regards to power as well.
Yeah.
Right. So even utensils, the fork is female, the knife is masculine.
Yeah.
Right. And the spoon is feminine as well, right? So everything masculine is strong and this,
and powerful
and useful. Everything, it has a purpose. Is so, and it, like sexism even goes into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
El cepillo de diente, la pasta dental, like.
Like even day and night. I was watching a documentary where it started with that. They were saying that el día, day, is masculine, and night is feminine.
Yeah, you're right. El tenedor, el cuchillo, pero la cuchara. That's it. It was something very specific around like the usefulness around like stabbing, cutting, and then carrying.
Yeah.
No, every single thing has like la mesa, el piso. You know, it's like it's so
and it's like in pair, right? It's in tandem, so it works with something else.
Correct.
Right? And that is part of the. You see this full over here? Then come say hi to the people.
Hi, people.
Hey.
Ice cream sandwich. Ooh, those are my favorites.
That and Pop-Tart, I hear.
And a Pop-Tart? What kind though? The brown cinnamon sugar. You know they discontinued that one.
Yeah, I know. It's an outrage. What's the next one that you like tonight? The s'mores Pop-Tarts are the ones that have been winning now.
That too, but the cinnamon brown sugar.
Oh no, wait, they still have them. I just ordered some the other day. I just saw them. I'm gonna get you some.
They said it was discontinued.
Krishna says, yeah, my grandfather used to say the only good car is one named after a woman. But my mom calls her car Eddie after him.
But it's el carro.
El carro.
The sun is masculine, the moon is feminine because it's a reflection of the sun.
Las llantas.
Yeah. Labor. We always labor. I think we have to wrap up, but are we gonna, before we go, can we mention, I mean, we don't really have to, but the deaths, the youth deaths.
The massacres. The
murder.
The massacres. And there's another one that happened in Nariño. These are not all Black children, but I think it's confirmed 15 people massacred in Nariño in Colombia.
Yeah, so we're talking about Nariño, which you just sent us information on that, Janvieve. So 5 children that were
So in the past 30 years, I think there were 15 young people killed.
15, adding to the 5 children that were killed in Cali when they were flying kites.
In Panama.
The 7 children killed in Panama. The kidnapped Garifuna leaders.
In Honduras.
Also Brazil. Specifically the what you told us, because we did a workshop on Saturday. And the massacre of the children in Colombia that happened last week, and we were dealing with that, and we were facilitating and dealing with that, and it's not even it's at the same time. It's happening at the same time. And what you said during the workshop, what your son said,
innocence lost. Just well, you know, beyond that, I watched the whole funeral. I watched the whole funeral. And it was a group funeral. I don't even want to go into it like that because it's like I think folks, if you do a search for Llano Verde, Llano, Verde Verde, you know, 5 young people were killed in Colombia. 5 young men, their lives just stolen. They were flying kites. And you would think, I think people here a lot of times would hear like flying kites. Teenagers? What the hell? Right. But this is an actual hobby in a lot of places in Latin America. Flying kites. That's what you do for fun, believe it or not. There's not a lot of public infrastructure in a lot of places. There's a lot of beach area, rivers, open spaces. Yes, kite flying, homemade kites, making kites is a thing. It's a lot of fun, actually. And they were just massacred, just killed. And the mother, one of the mothers or the aunts shared that the machetes were still full of blood. Like, it was a massacre. So, and I think it's important for us to hear that because here people are speaking about when we're talking about people from Latin America, the conversation here stops around if we're black or not. And I really don't care if people are black or not, to be honest, because we are dying. We're being kicked out of our like people are being kicked out of their ancestral lands. People are being forced to join gangs. Women are being mass raped and mass killed. People are being disappeared. People are being denied their right to practice their ancestral religions and traditions. People are living under extreme death threats where they can't live. You know, Dash mentioned that she didn't know that that a prominent leader had children, and this is because she can't divulge it. It puts their children in danger. And she's not the only one.
Yeah.
So I don't care if people here are black or Afro Latino or mixed. I really don't care. But just stop it. Educate yourselves and start just doing other things that will lead to people's liberation and the mass killings, and start demanding these governments to give answers to the people.
Yeah.
Stop making children to lose their innocence. Little Gibran, my son, right? Thinking that now he can't fly kites no more. Being scared to maybe go to Colombia one day. Or worse, go home. He doesn't need to know what happened in Panama. Okay, he's still a child. So I also need to be conscious about what I'm posting around him.
Yeah. What you said when you shared, because he was hearing you talk about it, and so finally you were like, okay, I'll share a little of this information, since you're inquiring. And you told him that the kids went to fly kite. They went to fly kites like any kid would. And
you said, I won't be doing that again.
What did he say?
I won't be doing that again. Or I won't be doing that anymore.
Flying kite.
And I'm sure other kids in Colombia are thinking the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the trauma process from from essentially birth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fucking unreasonable, right? That children will be robbed of an activity that they love, that these kids were murdered in cold blood doing an activity that they love, like that children cannot be children, that as Black people, we always have to continuously rob our children of their childhood in a desire to keep them safe in a world that is committed to not seeing them as children and robbing them of the experience of even getting to adulthood.
Yeah.
Like, it's unacceptable to me.
Is there an inkling of who and why and what? Like that's what I haven't been seeing. Maybe they don't know yet. Maybe they do know. And that's why they're not saying, you know? But I'm just aghast, appalled. Before we did the live, I took a nap because now I'm like really into this nap thing. Like I'm really like pumping that for people.
Shout out to the nap ministry.
Right? And also she is Mela. Melania Martin, how she's always like, did you take a nap today, sis? What's stopping you? And I'm like, what is stopping me? Took a nap. And I was like mustering all my energy up for this live because I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore, even though this is a continuous thing, right? This is part of our lives. It's like, damn, like, can y'all stop killing us? Literally.
And literally. When I read this story, I just got into bed with my own 15-year-old. Right? Like, I just got into bed with him because I hate that I even think about this, right? Like, I think that not only do other people experience it, but that I sometimes am like, oh my God, you know, that there's so many things that our children just can't experience comfortably.
And safely, right? The safety thing is always here.
Like,
right?
For lack of
anywhere.
You can't, it's just, and I always, like, I'm always thinking about, like, what information do I want to give, and does that continue to rob, right, my child of his experiences? And that is also the other side of that it's like, it just, I don't know, it hurts unbelievably, and it's something that you don't even know where to go, how to heal, right? Like, and it was back to back in the last week.
Yeah,
back to back. 15 young people.
Yeah.
That were killed in different countries, right? Some kidnapped, some just,
and for no reason, like, there's no reason, just for fun, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm just, it's been a month since the Garifuna leaders were kidnapped because of the leaders. They won the case on international court that is making the Honduran state give back stolen land from the Garifuna, and their response is to break the people, right? Let's kidnap your leaders, let's disappear them. And this comes at, after the murders of a few leaders a few weeks ago, and just the systematic killings of people who dare to step up or defend ourselves.
It's like the bullshit that people are sold everywhere, right? Black people are sold. Stand up, be proud, be a first. But then when you're a first, you also have to run the fucking risk. So then if you don't do shit, you're lazy. If you do something, the state kills you. Like, what do you do?
Like, damn. Like, I don't like
damned if you don't.
I don't like this pick your adventure Black experience. Like, pick the ending. Like, no, none of these endings are satisfactory for me.
Right.
It's not conducive to me living.
And that's the whole thing. Like, you can't take what you've learned to apply it to your own life, because then you're wrong and you're at risk.
At risk, yeah. Always.
So you're going to be at risk either way.
What'd you say?
I said you're going to be at risk either way.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, there are a couple comments here in the chat. Krishna says, I've been incredibly protective of her son, his exposure after he heard my husband reading Dash's post. CJ needs to know he's 14 and his reality is that he too could be killed for doing the most innocent childhood things. And Flor says, I struggle with taking my daughter to Nicaragua to meet her family or even to move back out of fear for our lives being in danger just for speaking out against government injustice. Like, the idea that you cannot speak out against injustice is inhumane. Like, how is it possible that I just have, in order to live, I have to be comfortable with justice?
Yeah.
Like, that's unacceptable. And then the idea that, like, you have to be constantly preparing your kids. For a generation ago, we fought against having to tell our kids, you got to work 3 times as hard as white people to get half as much. Because I was like, I'm not here for that. Mm-hmm. Why am I setting up my kids to have to work more than anybody else and get less? Like, what kind of parenting is that? And now I feel like I have to rob them of this particular experience by being like, you can't wear a hood, you can't go there, you can't play here, you can't do that. This is not accessible to you. Be careful for this. It's fucking exhausting. Like, one of the things that people don't recognize is that parenting while Black is a real thing. And maybe they recognize it, but it's like an everyday thing. 24 hours a day, you're worried about the safety of your children. Right? And if it's not their physical safety, we're worried about the mental safety that comes with all of the information that we have to give them in order to keep them physically protected. Because then it's healthy for somebody to have to constantly be trying to be told what they cannot do in order to keep them physically safe.
Yo, like, that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm not too keen on having children. Like that. Because you're just in general, children, it's like your heart is on the outside of your body, right? But even more so with Black children. I'm like, so I'm gonna just have to not sleep soon. You know what I'm saying? From the time you find out you're pregnant, right? Because it's not even when they're born. Because the dangers are pre, post, during partum, right? And it's like, damn, I'm already an anxious person. What is this gonna? This is gonna destroy me.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, that's why I keep close to parents, to women that have teenagers, because I need to be like, I'm preparing myself for that.
Yeah.
You know, mine is small now, so I keep them close. They're always with me. So I don't feel, I feel the fear, and I see their bodies change. I see their bodies changing, and that's my biggest indicator. You know, Gibbon's getting stronger, his body's getting bigger. You know, I see the little thighs and the little, the little glutes and the shoulders. You know, I see the body changes, especially the breath. Oh my God, I see the smell of breath changes. So I see the body changes, right? I know it's coming. I feel like once they hit 12, they're read very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes even sooner than that, right? Depending on like size and like where they live and things like that. Like, all of those things are indicators to the way that, to the experience that they stand to have. And that's really, and there are, so few safe spaces for our babies, and that really hurts. And I mean, definitely, like, one of the things that I recognize is happening also is that it's across the spectrum, right? As a doula, we're also giving, there's so much information about like the maternal health stats around Black women. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that there's also a lot of challenge with just the comfort that people are having with giving birth because of everything, right? People are afraid. And so it's, again, one of those things where I'm constantly thinking about, like, is so much information actually helpful? Because now we have so much more access, but that also has the potential to cause harm if it's not supported in a way, right? Like, yes, the data is there, but also like you have a team, you have a squad, like, and really thinking about the last few births that I have either directly participated in or supported other people through, in the sense of really being able to support other doulas. And one of the things that has been coming up is really recognizing that people, because their clients are afraid that things are lasting longer. So it's like it's almost leading to the outcomes that they don't want as a result of the fear that they have because of all of the information that they've taken in.
Yeah.
And that is extraordinarily heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree, Mariana.
Yeah.
So hard.
Mariana is committed, right? They're like, I will spell this properly. So, thank.
All right. I'm gonna say the F word.
All right, folks. That's all, folks.
You know what? I didn't even think about that as the F word. I was like, huh? Like,
you're like, oh, we're rolling up on the one who stole your word right now?
Right. I was like, word? I was like, Brittany, like, where you at? Get the bag.
Let me get him a private jet real fast.
Right.
Hey, did you all? Sorry, did you all hear or read that folks are traveling? You know, everybody get ready because COVID is coming back. I hope not. Knock on wood. But folks are traveling from New York to Florida to Disney World over Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yeah. I saw a webinar in my email saying it's for travel professionals, how to sell Disney during COVID. I'm like, don't.
What? But did you hear about what is the university that just closed 8 days after they opened? Notre Dame? Because 146 cases of COVID in students and the professor? 8 days. And they were like, all right, y'all got to go back home.
Stupidity.
I don't even want to think about it, child.
Stupidity.
That just, I think it was today, like a couple of universities were like, on second thought, we go.
The levels of ass clownery. I just get, what? Excuse me? The fuck? And how they're like mandating students to wear uniforms in their house and they can't get up to go to the bathroom or get water.
You know, I am pissed about that foolishness. I went to a kid's party.
For me, that's parents. Because let my child's school tell me that they have to wear a uniform. I'll be like, okay, wait for it.
I went to a kid's party on Sunday. Yeah, see? Thank you, Krishna. UNC and Notre Dame. I went to a kid's party and this man was complaining, talking about Old Navy ain't have no clothes. And I was like, why you need clothes? He was like, I said, oh, your kids going to school in the fall? He was like, no, they home. But the school is making them wear a uniform. At home? And I could understand maybe, all right, fine. You may not want to, maybe some kids sleep shirtless or whatever. Don't roll up in front of Zoom or Google Meets with no shirt on. But to wear a, like, I was just like, why? But apparently,
as long as your clothes.
I was like,
listen. And then they can't, no, I heard that. Now, the food thing, I could understand. Because sometimes, you know, I see my own kids. They be like doing the most in front of like Anayansi loves to eat like.
And Anayansi like the work. You'll be like, yes to this sancocho.
Exactly. So I get the teachers do not allow food. I get that, but they allow bottles with a cap on it because if you know some kids also like spilling stuff just for spilling stuff's sake. Like, oh, it's spilled
directly on the laptop.
No, or on the floor. You know, accidents, and it's like so. That's one, but. My teachers have never complained about water break or about stuff or about bathroom because you also give kids a specific schedule. So that's like the kid stuff. I have a good friend, folks, that like this is like the other side of what's happening, right? This friend's mom is in her 60s and she's having like a really hard time because she teaches I think 3rd or 4th grade. She's been teaching for over 20 years. And the anxiety is so high that it's really like taken over her whole being.
Yeah.
Because She has been teaching for all these years, and she's an excellent teacher for these little kids. And teaching online is not a skill that she's ever had. And last year she had to. My friend was the one that did most of her lesson plan, on like transferred online and set up all the calls and everything else. But this is like becoming like,
Yeah.
so it's like the other side. Like there are all these teachers that are being like pushed and shoved that just don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean,
beyond the push and shove, like there's also the idea of like the experience that I'm very concerned about, the experience that some kids tend to have when they're being taught by people who don't want to be there.
Absolutely.
Right. And if we're not really shit, they don't want to be there when it's not COVID.
Oh,
Right. Much less, like, you know, that I do teacher coaching, and like I go in and like talk about a whole bunch of stuff, and like I can't tell you how many times I've seen a teacher be like 3 months, 2 hours, 6 minutes before I'm up out of this piece.
like retiring.
Say they can't stand specific children. Like I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they know they can't stand Pablo, Esther, and
Right.
Dolores.
Shit, I'm afraid to sneeze now in public. I'm afraid. Like if I have to sneeze, I'm like, no. I'm all like, because can you imagine that paranoid teacher that doesn't feel like they have an option getting on a second grader because they have to sneeze?
That's a lot.
Who they already maybe don't like because they have different learning abilities or things of that nature. Like,
That's a lot. You saw the meme where it was like kids cough like this, and it's the cat, and the cat's like, it's like kids cough like that, and y'all want to open school.
listen.
No, one of the kids' teachers, well, ex-teachers, sent a long ass letter of why the school should not reopen. Of course, we all know why the school should not reopen. But she sent this, and the one that hit me was that when a child or a first grader is crying, she has to stand 6 feet away from that crying child. She cannot help to adjust the mask. She cannot hand them a Kleenex with the DOE regulations.
Yeah.
Like, none of these things could happen with the COVID regulations. So a crying child would have to just stand there by themselves. And it brought up for me like all these detention centers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. You can't comfort.
The littles, you know, they just started school. Can you imagine the first day of school that you have to be there? Your parents can't even be there. You're like 4 or 5 years old. The tears, and having teachers be on the side and they cannot do it. And then if
they want to.
And they want to. They want to. This makes me so sad. This was sad, you guys. Well, you guys, right? Correction.
That drag by your eyebrows.
No, watch me. You don't have to get no eyebrows. I'm gonna have like one left at the end of the drag.
You know what the meme is? So they finna drag you. The meme, and it's a person holding up a sign that says they finna drag you.
I'm dragged. This was sad. People.
Dragged.
Some days it's just like that. I've had a sad day all
like that. I've been hitting those gummies.
I'm going to hit a gummy right now because I have a kink on my neck right here. It hurts so much.
My mom's like sold on those CBDs. She's like with the CBDs. Okay. I'm
not mad.
She had a pain in her leg. It was something with her leg, and she took it. And she said she woke up. She felt like a new person. She's like, I'm not letting these go, because she was gonna mail it to me. She's like, no, you're not getting no.
So you all want to give some good news?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So there was a person, remember, that wrote us for one of our trainings, and had used the language around a pre-sale. No, a pre-sale that she had bought pre-sale tickets.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that person wrote another email saying, I realized even sending this email was rude and inconsiderate to the work that we already put in. Sorry, and I'm glad to support without any return.
Shout out to you.
Did the right thing.
Look how I'm clapping.
Now it shouldn't have gotten there, but we didn't have to do anything. It's like that person did everything that they had to do,
Yeah.
but they didn't have to do anything at all.
Yeah.
So they did work that they didn't have to do, and that's where, remember where you said that I dragged that woman on the workshop, where that woman said, I didn't want to bother you. That's what that person did. In their mind, it's like, I don't want to bother you, but I bought pre-sale tickets that we never offered.
Yeah. Right. Well, accommodate me anyway.
Right.
Accommodate me, and I want to use that in future things, even though you don't offer that. Oh, okay. Forget the email that I sent.
We did.
Right. We didn't ever address it. We was just like, it didn't even make it to the group chat. That's how we ain't even address it. Like, it didn't even get to the group chat.
No, it didn't. Yeah, you're right.
It didn't get to the group chat. I saw it and I was like, next case? Like, you know what?
No, I think the only thing that made it to the group chat was like a funny thing around the word pre-sale. Like, we had offered that. Like, we were like carne en palito vendors.
No.
I was like, this person really thinks that we're selling carne en palito at the carnival.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, yeah, and it's complicated, and it's not at the same time. Like, I think that it's just the way that we are. I want to say in part that like U.S. culture also convinces you that that's the right way to be a consumer. Right? And that you should always be accommodated in a way that suits you, right? I'm guilty of doing it. I'm not even gonna lie. That I'm guilty of. I have done it, maybe not in this capacity, but I also have to say that I haven't always been in the financial space to be able to take certain losses, right? So as a result, I've always been like, I'm gonna try to get something, right? It's only maybe like fairly recently where I would be like, all right, it's a loss and I'm fine. But like, I certainly have tried to like utilize whatever, just like access. If I have your email, I'm going to ask you. If I have your, without real recognition of the time, and also because I know that I've been the type of person where people have also done the same to me, and I've responded with no, like without thinking about how much this may inconvenience me, right? So I think that there is a level of it, and I think that it's important for us all to really be recognizing of it. Like, one of the things that this teaches me also as a Black person is that I don't have to answer to everything. I don't have to have a response to everything all the time, which I think is also something that certain environments, like, I'm really grateful that we were able to even like have this resolved without even typing a single word or even giving it any type of like brain power. Right? But because even responding to be like, bitch, you thought, is brain power. Right? So it's like so it's like thinking about the ways in which that can happen. So it's like
they clear themselves. That's how you clear them. Clear them yourself.
Exactly. Say, you know what I mean? Like
silence. I feel like silence is
and silence is a response. That is a response. No response is a response, and that is a reminder to me for sure that no response is a response, and that I don't always have to respond to things in order to get them like totally. So it's a learning tool, and it's also a learning tool to remember that just because you said, like, for me, it's always been like, just because somebody makes the request doesn't mean that I have to honor it, but I can acknowledge that people can make the request, right? And again, positioning myself as having made some requests that I now know are irrational. Like seriously, like I've made some irrational requests. You know when you ask somebody to do something right away and they'll be like, that's not an emergency for me. But I'll be like, come on, do it right now. It's gonna take a little bit of time. Come on. So, and that can be perceived as like abusive, right? In relationships that I have, like, so.
Oh my God.
Like just thinking about it and always being in a process of learning, which I think all these things constantly teach us. Like, so all the things that we've talked about tonight, whether it be being and learning around language, whether it be being and learning around world events, right? Because that's another thing that living in the United States for many of us does not encourage us to do, is to really be as versed on international affairs, and also to recognize the similarities between things that are happening in other spaces and things that are happening locally, to the point that we start to play, like, you know, what Janvieve has referred to as oppression Olympics, where you start to think that where you're at is the worst, and you're just like, nah, B.
No,
it ain't that things are happening, right? That the same fear that we're having for our children in the Bronx is the fear that people are having for their children in Cali, is the same fear that people are having for their children in Botswana. So it is, you know, we are one band playing one sound. Shout out to Drumline.
And I want to leave people with, be kind to Black women. Like really, like, stop demanding things of us. Stop tagging us to be your attack dogs for your raggedy ass family and friends, or to what are your thoughts on this? Stop tagging us to re-traumatizing things.
And when
stop demanding of us.
And when we do whatever agency we take, let us take it. Because think about, like, last week, people was up in a roar around WAP. Right? Shout out to the WAPtivists, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, WAPtivists, right? That they out here talking about agency, you know, and free market trade, and people had a whole bunch of issue with it.
Oh, like I mean,
Jeff Bezos. Why they gotta be mad at Cardi and Meg?
Right. This is for another time, but a white Mexican tweeted today, "Black women will save us," and Black women were like, "Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that?" And I'm like, the layer is that this is a white Mexican saying that too, because he's believing it in the U.S. and in Latin America, because as we're saying, we have the same lucha, we have the same struggles.
Yeah.
So black women are like, nah, don't tap me. Like, I made the analogy during the workshop. We used to tap my mother on her shoulder, and she used to collapse it. So collapse shoulders.
Yeah, everybody's saying that now with Kamala Harris and everything else too.
Yeah. Like, don't invoke our names. Like, keep Black women's names out your mouth.
Yeah, because even in that support, you're giving us more work. Like, it's like a shout out, but an insult at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just dumping on us. It's just filling up more garbage bags and pitching it our way.
Oh, yeah, and this needs to be done too. And I'm going to take your style and I'm going to sell it back to you.
And degrade you for wearing and doing what you created, what you invented.
Give me that bag back. Let me put my dirty socks in there too.
Right.
No. They just threw it on the floor. They didn't even hand it over.
That's right, Krishna. Krishna said they saw that tweet and logged off. And Whitney wants to acknowledge WAP as being the best song. Definitely the song of the summer.
Yeah.
Needed a little bop.
And the thing is, I don't understand why people, like, sometimes you do want to gag and you do want to choke. Like, what is fact of life.
Wait, hold on. Let me get Shit.
These are facts of life. You take the good, you take the bad.
We should have done a minute by minute and a piece of WAP without the two white people in it.
Oh yeah. They weren't coming for Rosalia as bad because people don't know who she is, which I'm like, ooh, well, I like that. But now I feel like now you're gonna know because I'm complaining about her. So it's like, Which one do I do? Do I clown you or just ignore you? Which one? All right, folks.
All right, folks.
All right. Sweet dreams, mi gente.
Shout out to the activists.
We can close with that one.
Shout out to the WAPtivists out there. No one, Krishna. No one.
The ones complaining are the ones with the dops.
Oh, turn that dop to a WAP.
All right, folks. Good night.
Bye.
Wap, wap.
Throw up your W's if you got WAPs out there.
Wait, how do you do?
Wait. Is that the West Side?
I don't know.
What is that? What is that?
Wait, that's W.
WAPtivist.
W for WAPtivist.
WAPtivist.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.